Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be checking out an amp that no one seems to know anything about, not even the manufacturer themselves. Now you will have already seen and heard a little bit of this amp if you've seen my £100 eBay rig video, and if you haven't already seen that then, make sure you go and watch that one afterwards. But aside from that, I'm guessing that the majority of you won't have ever seen or heard of this amp before. So I am of course talking about the Laney K35 twin reverb. Yes, I said twin reverb, but not the Fenders you're thinking of. This is a Laney. So this is a British made amp. So like I said, there's very little information on this amp that I can seem to find, but I have done my digging and a bit of research, and so I wanted to sort of compile it all together in this video, because when you search on YouTube, again, nothing comes up. So we'll start with the basics at least. This is a 35 watt, I believe, solid state combo amp with two 10-inch speakers, which are Fein acoustic speakers. Now don't worry if you haven't heard of them before, because I haven't either, but a quick Google search will tell you that they're still in business today and they're based somewhere in West Yorkshire. Now I say they are still in business because this is definitely an old amp. The little that Laney could tell me about this is that these amps were made between 1976 and 1975 and came out of the Digbeth factory in Birmingham, and these followed on from the success of the Clip series of amps, things like the K30, which slightly preceded it. But other than that, I can't really tell you a whole lot more about this amp other than the features. So let's have a look at the front of this amp and see what it's got built into it. So as you can see over here on the amp cam, next to the power button, we've got a spring reverb tank, we've got a built-in tremolo, we've got a 3-band EQ with a bright boost, and then an overall master volume. It's also got two inputs, one of which I believe is a low sensitivity input. You've then also got the option for a foot switch to turn on and off the reverb tank, and a line out. So let's get into what it sounds like. Now I'm sure knowing that it's called a twin reverb, you've already got some idea in your mind of what this is going to sound like. But to me this isn't really a Fender twin at all, and actually for me I've found that it more reminds me of something like a jazz chorus, because this amp is obviously solid state and is extremely clean. So to demonstrate this for you today, I'm playing a guitar that I should play a lot more, but this is my Epiphone Casino in Worn Olive Drab. Obviously it's got some dog ear P90s in it. I'm then running that through my pedal board. In a little bit I just want to kick in a few effects here and there just so I can show you how this amp reacts to that. And then obviously after the pedal board I'm going into the amp. Now you can't quite see this over on the amp cam, but you can see the mic stands, and that's because I'm miking up both speakers on this cabinet, both slightly off centre from the cone, and one speaker is mic'd up with a Shure SM57 and the other speaker is mic'd up with a Sennheiser E906. So with no effects whatsoever, it sounds something like this. So that's the sort of clean tone you get out of this. As you can see in the EQ, I've got the treble just rolled off slightly because, especially with the bright switch in as it is now, it gets quite bright and chimey and a touch harsh, so I've just rolled a little bit of that top off. If I now take out the bright switch, this is what it sounds like. So it's quite a lot darker with that switch not engaged, so I'm going to kick that back in now because that's how I prefer it. Now as you can see, we've got the reverb about halfway, so that's something like this. And then if we turn it all the way up, it sounds more like this. So it has got quite a good long reverb in it, and as you'd expect from it being the 70s, it is a genuine spring reverb, and I think it sounds quite nice. The only other built-in feature that this amp has is the tremolo. Now weirdly, the speed goes faster the closer you get to 0, which seems a bit counterintuitive to me, but that's just the way it is on this amp. But I've got the speed around the 4 o'clock mark, and if I dial in the depth to about halfway, you get something that sounds like this. And I think that's a really nice sounding tremolo. If you turn the depth all the way up, obviously you get into really choppy territory. And if I turn the speed all the way down, which is the fastest it goes, you get something like this. Turn the depth back down for now. But it's kind of exactly what you'd expect from a tremolo, but nonetheless sounds really nice. So that gives you some idea of what this amp sounds like on its own, but more than likely, if you're like me, you're going to be using pedals with it. So how does it handle pedals? Well, I'm finding it to be a bit of a mixed bag, as is often the case with most really, really clean amps, and especially solid state amps. I find that it doesn't take distortion and certainly not overdrive particularly well at all, but it does take modulation style effects and more ambient stuff really, really nicely. So I'm going to kick in the EHX Good Vibes, which is a uni-vibe pedal, and with that kicked in it sounds something like this. Or if I were to kick in, say, a phase 90. So I think it sounds really nice with a bit of modulation added into it. Now it does also handle a bit of a crunch quite nicely. So if I kick in my Tube Screamer style overdrive, which has got the volume most of the way up and the gain almost at 0, it gives you quite a nice sort of bluesy sort of tone. Which I think is quite a nice tone and is certainly usable. But if I was to kick in my extra gain and stack them like I like to do, it's not so nice. Now I don't know how that comes through on the microphones, but I often find that you do lose a bit of the harshness through the mics. But in the room it's not the most pleasant, and it certainly isn't anywhere near as nice as driving the front end of a tube amp. But then that's kind of to be expected with solid state, isn't it? And really that's not what this amp is designed for in the slightest. You do also get a very similar effect, and again, not the nicest breakup when you really crank the volume, but I'm talking taking it to sort of 85–90%. It does stay remarkably clean for most of the way up the volume pot. The last thing I just want to demonstrate to you while we're looking at pedals is a bit of fuzz. So I've got a Russian Big Muff here, but again this wouldn't be my choice or my go-to for a platform for a fuzz pedal either. So that certainly is better than just driving it with an overdrive, but it's still not as nice as you can get it, especially if you put it into the front of something that's already about to break up and can handle a bit more gain. But again, that's not what this amp is for. As the name would suggest, with it being called a twin reverb, I think this is designed with those sort of much cleaner tones in mind. But I hope that gives you some sort of idea about what this amp sounds like, and I'm sorry that I really couldn't provide much more backstory on this one. I honestly can't find any information, but if you do know anything about this amp, please get in touch because I would love to know more about it. Considering that I picked it up for the grand total of £11 in that £100 eBay rig video, I've been absolutely amazed with how this sounds, and I'm definitely going to be hanging on to it because, like I said earlier in my comparison to the Jazz Chorus, I've been wanting one of those for quite some time, and I found that actually this thing has really scratched that itch. Out of all the amps I have, I think it would be one of my go-to choices for that really, really clean tone. But let me know what you think of the tones that I'm getting out of this thing down in the comments below. Again, if you do know anything more about this, please let me know. And if you have any experience with anything like the K30 or some of these other Laney amps from around the 70s, let me know about those as well, because I would certainly be interested to hear what the other ones are like. But that does it for today. So as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.